She's trying to steal my husband. Those words cut through the air sharper than any knife. My sister's voice wasn't just loud, it was venomous. The kitchen smelled of burnt soup, the rain hammered against the window, and the clock above the stove ticked like it was counting down to something I couldn't stop. Imagine being thrown out by your own sister, and months later she shows up at your door begging for help. What would you do? Don't skip this one. Every moment builds to a decision you won't forget. I didn't yell back. I didn't even move. I just stood there, gripping the back of a chair so hard my knuckles went white. My heart wasn't racing. It was oddly slow, like my body knew I had to stay calm to survive this moment. "You've lost your mind," I finally said, my voice low and steady. That calm tone scared her more than if I'd screamed. She stood across the kitchen island, hands planted on the counter, glaring at me like I was a stranger. Her husband sat on the couch in the living room, staring at the TV as if he could pretend none of this was happening. That hurt more than her words. "You think I can't see it?" she said, her voice cracking now. "The way you laugh at his jokes, the way you stay up talking when you think I'm asleep." "That's not what this is," I cut in. My chest felt tight, but I kept my voice level. "You're angry at him and you're taking it out on me." Her face went red. She grabbed my overnight bag from the hallway and threw it at my feet. "Get out. Now." For a second I almost reached for the bag. My fingers twitched. But then I remembered the way I had helped her move into this house. How I'd stayed up 3 nights painting the kids' room while she slept. How I'd cooked her dinners when she was sick. "No," I said softly. "I'm not leaving because of a lie." Her husband finally looked over then, eyes darting between us like a guilty child caught between 2 parents. He didn't speak. Didn't defend me. Didn't even blink. That silence was the loudest sound in the room. I said, "Get out," she screamed. The kids appeared at the top of the stairs, their little faces pale and wide-eyed. I saw one of them clutching the railing, scared. That broke something inside me. I bent down, picked up my bag and walked past her without another word. But as I reached the door I turned and looked at her. Really looked at her. "You'll regret this," I said quietly. Not a threat. Just a fact. The rain hit my face as soon as I stepped outside. Cold, hard, soaking me instantly. I didn't run for the car. I stood there for a moment, letting the storm wash over me. The porch light flickered above my head and through the window I saw my sister pull the kids back upstairs. Her husband stayed on the couch, staring at the dark TV screen. I walked to my car, but before I opened the door I saw something in the driveway that made me pause. His toolbox was missing from the truck bed. I knew that meant something, though I didn't know what yet. When I finally got behind the wheel I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, dripping wet, staring at the house I had helped her make into a home. I thought about the last few weeks, the late-night phone calls I had overheard, the way he had been staying later and later at work, the sudden tension in their voices when I walked into the room. Maybe this wasn't really about me. Maybe she was scared of something else and needed someone to blame. So the hurt ran deep. I drove to a diner a few miles away, my favorite place when I needed to think. It was nearly empty at that hour. Just a trucker nursing a coffee and a young waitress wiping down tables. "You okay, hon?" she asked when she saw me. I nodded and ordered tea, wrapping my hands around the warm mug when it came. The rain tapped against the diner windows like impatient fingers. I replayed every moment of the fight in my head, looking for signs I had missed. The way my sister's voice had cracked. Was it anger or fear? And why had her husband been so quiet? I stayed there until closing, then drove to a friend's house and asked to sleep on her couch. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and said, "You can stay as long as you need." But I didn't sleep. I kept seeing my sister's face, her eyes burning with accusation. I kept hearing the kids' footsteps on the stairs, the sound of their scared little breaths. And under it all I kept thinking about that missing toolbox. The next morning I drove back to her street before dawn and parked across from the house. The curtains were closed, but one light was on in the kitchen. I could just barely see my sister pacing back and forth, phone in hand. Her husband's truck was gone. When the sun started to rise, I left before she could see me. All day I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening behind the scenes, something she wasn't telling me. That night I called her. She didn't answer. I left a message. "You owe me the truth," I said. No reply. By the 3rd day I stopped calling. She wanted to throw me out of her life, fine. But I wouldn't be the one crawling back. That Friday I saw him, her husband, at the hardware store. He looked surprised to see me, then guilty. "Everything okay at the house?" I asked casually. He hesitated just a little too long. "Yeah. Fine." But his shirt was wrinkled like he hadn't been home in days. I smiled, a slow, calm smile that made him shift uncomfortably. "Good," I said. "Tell my sister I said hello." I walked away before he could answer. When I got to my car, I sat there and let out a long breath. I wasn't sure what was happening between them, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And deep down, under the hurt, under the anger, there was something else. A strange, quiet sense of control. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little sister who always cleaned up everyone's mess. This time I was going to let the mess spread until the truth came out on its own. I didn't know when that would be, but I could wait. And when it did, I would be ready. I drove away from the hardware store that afternoon with my hands tight on the wheel, the steering pulling just a little to the right like it always did, reminding me how old my car was. I didn't cry this time. I didn't scream either. I just drove until the gas light came on and then pulled into the first cheap motel I saw, a squat beige building with a flickering vacancy sign. The room smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, even though the sign said non-smoking. The carpet was thin, the sheets scratchy, but it was a bed and a door I could lock. I dropped my bag, sat down on the edge of the mattress and let out a long, shaky breath. For the first time in 2 days, I let myself feel everything at once. The humiliation, the anger, the betrayal, all of it washed over me until I couldn't tell if I was crying or just tired. When I woke the next morning, my neck ached from the flat pillow. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a stranger. Hair messy, eyes red, skin pale from lack of sleep. I told myself I'd stay one more night. Just one. But when checkout came, I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I paid for another night. And another. By the 4th day, I knew I couldn't keep spending money like this. My savings weren't much. Just a little from a part-time bookkeeping job I'd been doing online. I called my friend, the one whose couch I'd crashed on before, but she said her brother was staying with her now. No room. So I started looking for something more permanent. The first apartment I toured was small. A single room with a tiny kitchenette and a bathroom so narrow I could touch both walls at once. But it was cheap. The landlord, a gray-haired man with reading glasses, asked if I could pay first and last month's rent. My hands shook as I counted out the cash. When he handed me the key, something shifted inside me. I wasn't anyone's guest anymore. This little space, with its peeling linoleum and buzzing overhead light, was mine. The first night I slept on the floor because I didn't have a bed yet. My back ached in the morning, but I didn't care. I woke up to quiet. No shouting. No accusations. Just the sound of my own breathing. I got a job a week later at a local diner. Mornings only, taking orders and pouring coffee for regulars who all seemed to know each other by name. The work was hard on my feet, but the people were kind, and I left every shift smelling of bacon and fresh coffee. At night, I'd sit on the floor of my apartment and eat simple meals. Toast, eggs, whatever I could afford, and make lists of everything I needed. Bed, chair, curtains. Little by little, I bought them secondhand, carrying each piece up the stairs myself. But even as I was building this new life, my sister's words haunted me. Some nights, I'd lie awake and hear her voice again. "She's trying to steal my husband." And my chest would tighten. One Saturday after work, I saw her car parked outside the grocery store. I froze. For a moment I thought about turning around, but then I saw her getting out of the car alone. She looked tired. Not just physically, there was a heaviness in the way she moved, like she was carrying something invisible on her back. I ducked behind the produce display and watched her for a minute. She was on the phone, whispering fast, her free hand rubbing her temple. I didn't approach her. Not yet. Instead, I went home and wrote in my notebook, "She's hiding something." It became a kind of ritual after that. Anytime I noticed something strange, her husband's truck parked at a bar on a weekday morning, or one of the kids walking to school alone when he usually drove them, I wrote it down. I wasn't spying exactly. I just wanted to understand. One evening after a long shift, I found a letter stuck under my door. No return address. Just my name in shaky handwriting. I opened it and froze. It was from my sister. She wrote that things weren't good at home. That she missed me. That she was sorry, but she didn't say for what. At the bottom she asked if we could talk. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I cleaned my apartment. Really cleaned it. Scrubbing the counters, washing the windows, rearranging the furniture. Something about making the place spotless made me feel like I was in control again. Then I sat down and wrote her back. "I'll meet you," I wrote. "But not at your house. Neutral ground." We picked a coffee shop halfway between us. The day of the meeting, I got there early and sat by the window, my hands wrapped around a mug. My heart was beating slow and heavy, like it had that night in her kitchen. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked thinner, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes darted around until she saw me. She sat down without a word. For a minute we just stared at each other. Then she said softly, "I shouldn't have said what I said." I didn't speak. "I was angry," she continued. "At him. At myself. At everyone. I took it out on you." There was more to the story, I could hear it in her voice. But she didn't offer it. "Not yet." I nodded once. "I'm listening," I said. And that's when she told me, not everything but enough to make my stomach twist. Her husband hadn't been coming home. He'd been spending nights somewhere else. He didn't know where. She said she'd accused me because I was the easiest target. "I needed someone to blame," she whispered. I looked at her across that small coffee shop table and felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a strange mix of pity and anger. "You hurt me," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know." I didn't tell her I was keeping notes. I didn't tell her I'd been watching. That was my secret. When we left, she reached out like she wanted to hug me, but I stepped back. "Not yet," I said. Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She just nodded and walked away. I stood there a long time after she left, feeling the weight of everything I still didn't know. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over. I stood outside the coffee shop long after my sister walked away, the sound of the doorbell still ringing faintly in my ears. The cold air stung my face, but I didn't move. My hands were shaking, though I wasn't sure if it was from anger or sadness. When I finally drove home, I couldn't shake her expression. The way her shoulders slumped as she left, like the weight she was carrying was just too much. 3 days passed before I heard from her again. This time it wasn't a letter. It was a knock at my apartment door. Loud, desperate, the kind that makes your heart skip a beat. I opened it to find her standing there with both kids, their jackets zipped up to their chins, a single suitcase at her feet. Her hair was damp from the drizzle outside and her face was pale. "He's gone," she said simply. I stepped aside and let them in. The kids went straight to sit on the couch, quiet and tired, their shoes leaving little wet prints on the floor. My sister stayed by the door, still clutching the handle of the suitcase like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Gone where?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. She swallowed hard. "I don't know. He hasn't been home in a week. I found his work boots missing and his tools. The bank account's empty." I nodded slowly. The missing toolbox I'd noticed weeks ago flashed in my mind. So it hadn't just been my imagination. "Sit down," I said finally. We sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd bought secondhand, its surface scratched but sturdy. I poured her a cup of tea, the same way I always had when she was upset. But this time, there was no comfort in the ritual. "What happened?" I asked. She stared at her tea for a long time before answering. "He was cheating," she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought it might be you, but it wasn't. It was someone from his work. He moved in with her." There was the truth I'd been circling for months. I took a slow breath, letting the words settle between us. "You threw me out over nothing," I said quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But it was hard to forget that night. The rain, the shouting, the kids watching from the stairs." "So what now?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted. "Mom's too far and I can't afford a motel. I need a place for a few nights until I figure things out." I glanced at the kids on the couch, their small hands folded in their laps. They looked so lost. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to tell her to go figure it out on her own, the way I'd had to. But another part, the part that had once painted her nursery and stayed up rocking her babies when they were sick, couldn't do it. "You can stay," I said finally. "For now." Relief washed over her face, but there was something else there too. Exhaustion, fear, something I couldn't quite name. That night I made a simple dinner. Scrambled eggs, toast, and soup. The kids ate quietly and my sister barely touched her plate. After they went to bed, I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't going to be simple. The next morning, I woke early to the sound of whispering in the kitchen. My sister was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "No, I don't know where he is," she said. "Yes, I understand. I'll try to get the money by Friday." I stayed still, listening, my heart thudding in my chest. Money. Who was she talking to? When she hung up, I walked in casually, pretending I hadn't heard. "Morning," I said. She jumped a little, then forced a smile. "Morning." She didn't offer any explanation and I didn't ask, not yet. But I wrote it down in my notebook that night. Phone call. Money owed. Deadline Friday. The days that followed were tense. My apartment was small and we were constantly bumping into each other. The kids were quiet, sensing the tension even when we tried to hide it. One evening, while she was out looking for work, the landlord stopped by to fix a leaky faucet. He glanced around at the extra shoes by the door and said, "You know, your lease says no more than 2 occupants." I nodded, pretending not to be bothered, but inside I felt a knot tighten. If she stayed too long, I could lose my apartment. That night, I sat at the table with my notebook open, trying to figure out what to do. When my sister came home, she looked more worn down than ever. "No luck?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "Nobody's hiring right now. And I can't get childcare for interviews without money. I don't know what I'm going to do." I didn't answer. Later, after everyone was asleep, I stood by the window, looking out at the dark street. The air smelled of rain again, just like that night. I thought about how far I'd come, the motel nights, the empty apartment, the diner job. I'd built this life piece by piece, and now it felt like it was all about to be shaken apart. And yet, some small part of me felt almost calm. Because this time I wasn't powerless. This time she needed me more than I needed her. I turned from the window and looked at the sleeping forms on my couch. Tomorrow, I decided, we were going to have a real conversation. Not about the past, but about what came next. Tomorrow came just like I knew it would. I woke before the sun, sitting at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold in my hands. The apartment was still and quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My sister and the kids were still asleep in the living room. I could see them through the doorway, curled up under the blankets I'd given them. I stared at them for a long time. There was a time when that sight would have made me feel protective. Now it made my stomach twist. When my sister finally woke, she rubbed her eyes and walked into the kitchen, her hair sticking up in every direction. She looked surprised to see me already dressed, shoes on, as if I'd been waiting. "We need to talk," I said. She hesitated, then sat down across from me. "This can't go on like this," I said quietly. "My landlord's already noticed you're here. If he decides we're breaking the lease, I could lose this place." Her mouth tightened. "I know. I'm trying." "I don't think you do know," I interrupted gently but firmly. "This apartment is the first thing I've had that's truly mine. I built this life from scratch after you threw me out, and I can't let it fall apart." She looked down, her fingers twisting together. "I'm not saying you can't stay," I added after a moment. "I just need to know you're working toward something. That you have a plan." She let out a bitter laugh. "A plan? You think I planned for my husband to run off and leave me with nothing?" "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But I think you've been planning to rely on me, and that's not going to work forever." Her face flushed, but she didn't argue. I stood and grabbed my keys. "Come on. Let's go." "Where?" she asked, confused. "To get answers." I drove us across town to the house she used to share with her husband. The front yard was overgrown and the driveway empty. When we stepped inside, the air smelled stale, like no one had opened a window in weeks. The living room was half empty. Some of the furniture was gone. "Did you sell this?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "No. He must have taken it." I walked through the house, noticing little things. A picture frame turned face down, an empty spot where the television used to be, a kitchen drawer hanging open. "He's not coming back," I said finally. She didn't answer, just sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't raise them alone." Her voice cracked on the word, alone. I stood there for a moment, torn between anger and pity. "You already are," I said softly. That afternoon, back at my apartment, the tension between us was thick enough to touch. The kids played quietly in the corner, sensing the weight in the room. While she washed the dishes, I sat at the table, my notebook open. "You owe someone money," I said casually. She froze, then turned slowly. You were listening? Yes, I said. You said Friday. Who do you owe? Her shoulders slumped. The electric company. And the credit card. I used the last of our savings to pay the mortgage. I nodded, writing it down. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She threw the dish towel onto the counter. Because I didn't want you to think I was just here for money. Aren't you? I asked quietly. Her mouth opened, then closed. The kids looked over, then wide-eyed. I forced a smile for their sake. It's okay, I told them. Go finish your game. When they turned back around, I lowered my voice. You hurt me and now you want me to fix your life, I said. But I'm not sure you've even faced what you did. Tears filled her eyes. I have, she whispered. Every night. I hear my own voice shouting at you and I wish I could take it back. I wanted to believe her, but something in her tone made me pause. You still haven't told me why you thought it was me, I said. She stared at the floor. Because, she said finally, you were the only one he ever talked to. The only one who made him laugh. I thought maybe he wished he'd married you instead of me. Her words hit me like a slap. You blamed me because he liked me, I said flatly. I blamed you because I couldn't bear to blame him, she admitted. The honesty in her voice made my chest ache. I didn't answer right away. I got up, walked to the window and looked out at the street. A car passed, headlights flashing across the wall, then darkness again. When I turned back, she was watching me, waiting. You can stay, I said finally. But only one more night. Her face fell. What am I supposed to do after that? You'll figure it out, I said. The way I had to. She didn't argue. She just nodded, wiped her face and went to check on the kids. That night as I lay in bed, I could hear her crying softly in the other room. I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. I wasn't sure if I felt guilty or satisfied. Maybe both. The next morning I woke early again. I set out blankets, folded neatly and put her suitcase by the door. When she came into the kitchen she stopped short, looking at the pile. You mean it, she said quietly. Yes, I said. You need to go. She nodded, her face pale. I'll pack the kids' things, she said and disappeared into the living room. I sat back down at the table, my coffee growing cold again, and waited. This was my choice now, not hers. And for the first time that felt like enough. I didn't move when she came back into the kitchen. Her suitcase was zipped, the kids' small backpacks slung over their shoulders. She stood there silently, as if waiting for me to say something that would undo everything I'd just decided. But I stayed seated. You really won't let us stay? She asked finally. No, I said, my voice steady. Her shoulders sagged, but there was no anger in her face this time, only defeat. You know what the hardest part is? She asked softly. It's not leaving here. It's knowing I can never go back to the person I was before I hurt you. I looked at her for a long moment, then stood up and walked over to the door. You shouldn't, I said simply. I opened the door and stepped aside. She hesitated, her hand tightening on the suitcase handle. You were always the strong one, she said. I almost laughed at that, but the sound stuck in my throat. I wasn't, I said. But I had to learn. She nodded once, then motioned for the kids to follow her. They walked past me and out into the hallway. I stood in the doorway as they went down the stairs, the sound of their footsteps fading. When the door clicked shut behind them, the apartment felt bigger somehow. Emptier, yes, but lighter. I turned and leaned against the door, letting out a long breath. Then I saw it, her scarf lying on the chair where she'd left it. For a moment, I considered running after her to return it. But I didn't. I picked it up, held it to my face and then tossed it in the trash. I wasn't keeping anything that tied me to that night or to the months that followed. The next few hours passed in a haze. I stripped the couch covers, washed the blankets, scrubbed the counters. It felt less like cleaning and more like reclaiming the space. When I was done, I sat at the table and stared out the window. The street outside was quiet, the late morning sun hitting the pavement in sharp, bright patches. I thought about everything. The night she'd thrown me out, the weeks I'd spent surviving, the look on her face this morning when she realized I meant what I said. I had imagined this moment so many times, but it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like justice. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. Thank you for letting us stay last night. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care of the kids. I hit send and put the phone face down. I didn't expect a reply and none came. By late afternoon, the apartment felt completely mine again. I lit a candle on the table and brewed fresh coffee. As the smell filled the room, I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot finally coming undone. I sat there for a long time thinking about what came next. For years, my story had been tangled up with hers. But now, for the first time, I could imagine a life that didn't revolve around her approval, her judgment, or her betrayal. The thought scared me a little, but it also thrilled me. I got up, opened the window, and let the breeze in. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and a car horn sounded. The world was moving forward, and so was I. That night, I cooked myself a proper dinner. I put on music, the old kind we used to dance to as kids, and ate slowly, savoring every bite. When I finished, I washed the dishes and left the kitchen spotless. I didn't think about her again until I was getting ready for bed. I passed the trash can and saw the edge of her scarf sticking out. For a moment, I almost pulled it back out. But then I shook my head, tied up the bag, and carried it outside to the dumpster. When the lid slammed shut, it felt final. Back inside, I turned off all the lights except one small lamp. I sat on the couch and let the quiet settle over me. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I had survived. I had stood up for myself. And I had closed the door, not just on her but on the part of me that had waited so long for someone else to make things right. As I climbed into bed, the apartment felt warm and safe. The pillows smelled like clean laundry and the sheets were cool against my skin. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without replaying that night in my head. I didn't wake up once. When the sun came through the window the next morning, I didn't dread the day ahead. I just got up, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat by the window watching the light spread across the street. There was no anger left, just a quiet sense that the past had finally let go of me. And maybe that was the real revenge. Because I wasn't the broken sister anymore. I was freed. If this story hit you in the heart, make sure to subscribe. I share dark, emotional revenge stories every week. Stories about women who refuse to stay broken. Don't miss the next one.